You are listening to the Manuscript of Soul, Part 1, Chapter 7, Interstellar Space Station A2712. Stefano wiped the sweat from his forehead. He was almost done cleaning his bar. Routined with a quick movement of his hand, he tied up the garbage bag, placing it by the door. The soft jazz music playing in the background made the work feel lighter. He gave the counter one final wipe, then picked up his old helmet from the corner and left the Zuhause. Carrying the large garbage bag, he hurried across the pier and up the shaky metal spiral staircase that led to his dark car. He tossed the bag onto the landfill and climbed inside. He did not notice that in the half-light of dusk, two figures stood hidden in the shadows beside the building, watching him. As Stefano got into his dark car, they exchanged a nod, and one of the two men pulled out a small metallic capsule. The younger of the two glanced around nervously. "Are you sure this is the right thing to do? He's just an ordinary man." "Orders are orders," the other replied sternly, though he too wore a nervous crease between his eyebrows. A wave of nausea rose within him. Stefano's research has gone too far. He never should have detected that signal. People are beginning to grow suspicious about Earth. For now, it's only a small circle, but if there are too many, we can't afford a mass uprising. And that's why we're going to put an end to this pseudo-researcher. Why don't they just arrest him? He hasn't officially committed a crime. This will look like an accident, or an attack, but certainly not one carried out by the Federation. He slid the small capsule into a narrow gap in the outer wall of the bar, then grabbed his colleague by the arm, and they ran. Stefano had only been driving for a few minutes when a deafening explosion shook everything around him. Moments later, Federation's dark car sped towards the place he had just left, and Stefano too hesitantly turned around. His heart was heavy, his hands trembling. He still could not comprehend what had happened only a few minutes before. The closer he came to his bar, the deeper his heart sunk. He came to a stop when he saw how many star cars surrounded his bar, or what was left of it. Why? He stared paralyzed at the place where his bar had stood. Where the basement had been, a massive crater now gaped in the ground. Federation officers had already secured the area, and the fire had been extinguished, but his equipment was destroyed. His gaze caught on two figures hurrying away across the bridge. Stefano switched his dark car from coordinate autopilot to manual control and steered towards them. The moment they noticed him, they quickened their pace. They shouted something to one another. To his astonishment, Stefano realized he knew them. They were the two Federation soldiers who had been sitting behind Lux and Tavi in the bar the previous evening, while he had been talking to them about the signal. Blinded by rage, Stefano accelerated. He noticed an empty Federation vehicle parked further ahead on the bridge. He wasn't going to let them reach it. He accelerated more and cut them off. They turned around and Stefano accelerated towards them once more, this time not to block their path. He slammed into the first one from behind. The young soldier screamed as he was thrown forward, landing face first on the bridge. The other man glanced back in panic, but he didn't stop running. One of them was enough. Stefano climbed out of his dark car and grabbed the Federation soldier lying on the ground by the collar. He was startled by how young the man was, barely in his early 20s. Stefano shook him violently, his face twisted with fury. "Why?" he shouted. The young soldier looked at him with terror in his eyes. "Please, sir, please don't hurt me." "Why did you do it?" Stefano shouted again. "It was an order. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do it." The young man stammered, tears welling in his eyes. "Do you have any idea how long I worked on this?" Stefano demanded, still shaking with rage. "This," he pointed towards the ruined bar, "this was everything to me. Why would you do this?" "I'm sorry," the young soldier cried. Then Stefano heard the sirens of Federation vehicles. He looked up and saw them racing towards him in the distance. His hands, still gripping the young man's collar, slowly loosened. He threw him one last look of pure hatred, then climbed back into his darker and drove away as fast as he could. His thoughts were racing. He knew this could only have something to do with his discoveries. Now he knew he had been right all along, but what was the Federation trying to hide? Stefano glanced into the rear view mirror. No one was following him. He would have to disappear for a while. Damn it, Tavia thought to herself as Luke stormed down the hallway and away from her. I meant it when I said, it's an honor to be part of this mission. I really hoped you meant it too, rang in Tavi's ear. Gosh, how stupid. Why are men always so obsessed with honor, when in reality it's just another word for control? And how easy it makes it for those who like to wield power. Just tell the people beneath you what honor means. Just make them feel shame, and you'll have them die for you. Regardless of her resentful thoughts, a pulling pain spread through Tavi's chest. She didn't want Lux to leave. No one could know whether he would come back. No one could rely on the simulations to be 100% true. Tavi didn't know what to do. One couldn't defy the council's decisions. She was still standing there, frozen in place, and when she finally noticed it, she wasn't sure whether she should follow him or go back to her office. She decided to return to her office, closed the door behind her, and sank into the chair. A shiver ran down her spine, and she felt utterly powerless and alone. But how must he be feeling? Nothing will happen, Mr. Vo showed her when she told him that Lux has been selected. If it wasn't safe, they wouldn't be sending them out. But she had the feeling that he only said that to calm her down. Despite the unease she felt when she thought that her friend would go on the mission, she still wanted to find out more about the signal, so she decided after lunch to make her way to the Department of Radio Communication. It was in the building across from theirs. When she entered the large foyer on the other side of the plaza and took off her helmet, the man at the reception looked up from a book. What can I do for you? Tavi held up her staff ID. I'm from the Institute for Science and Technology. I have a few questions for the colleagues in the radio observation section. She was relieved to find that he had no intentions of asking any more questions. Down the hall and then right at the large statue. That's the chairman's office. Thank you. Tavi walked down the wide sterile corridor, whose walls were lined with images of distant galaxies and star systems. Then she reached a large copper statue. The plaque read, Elspeth Stone, scientist aboard the ship Starship One. We left the past to build the future. Tavi looked up at the serious face of the statue. The woman was about 165 meters tall and stood on a high pedestal. She had a slender figure and a vacuum helmet tucked under her arm, which looked old compared to the newer models they use today. Tavi continued walking and reached a door whose sign read, Board of Radio Signal Processing. She knocked on the door and opened it without waiting for an answer. Inside the office were 2 desks with computers. At one of them sat a young man wearing headphones, light hair falling into his face, and he seemed deeply absorbed in his work. He didn't move when she entered. At the other computer sat an older man, and on his desk stood a sign that read Professor Dr. Klemp. He glanced up over his round glasses and looked at Tavi questioningly. Hello, Tavi said and cleared her throat. She felt awkward. I'm a scientist at the ASIST, and I wanted to report that a radio signal has been detected that appears to originate from Earth. I wanted to ask if you have any information about it. The man at the desk raised his eyebrows. And you are? I'm Tavia Gent. Since when is the ASIST able to receive radio signals from space? He asked and took off his glasses. To be more precise, we didn't detect the signal. I mean, not the ASIST. It was a friend of mine. Dr. Klemp looked unimpressed. A friend of yours? Yes. He is a hobby astronomer. He detected it with his private equipment. The more Tavi said, the stranger she felt. She wished Lux were here now. And what exactly is the problem? The man said. I think this is an extremely significant discovery, Tavi said. And as a scientist, I want to get to the bottom of it. We have much better equipment here. More precisely, you have it. You can search for the signal. The younger man, who had still not given Tavia a single glance, stood up and left the room. You can't trust signals like that, the older man said. We have other projects. We have enough to do. He added and turned back towards his computer. I'm starting to feel like you don't even want to know whether there's something on Earth or not. I have proof. Tavia placed the papers with Stefano's signal on the table. The man didn't even look at it. You may leave now, he said. Tavia was confused by the reaction. She wanted to say something else, but at that moment the man grabbed the small stack of papers that Tavi had placed in front of him and threw it into the little trash bin beside the desk. Tavi felt anger rising up. You will regret this, she snarled and took a few steps backwards towards the door. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She was blaming herself internally. She should have prepared better. What was wrong with these people? Her head was buzzing, and she still stood there, shocked now outside of Dr. Clem's closed office door. Tavi was still processing what just happened when she noticed the younger man from the second desk. He was standing around the corner. Come with me, he said in a low voice. And without thinking much, she followed him into the empty hallway and around the next corner. I'm Lucien Way, he said as they walked. He looked stressed. What you said in there? He stopped behind the next corner. The lamps on the ceiling flickered. It's true. He looked around as if he wanted to make sure that really no one was listening. Don't ever talk about it again, not with anyone. His eyes flickered nervous. It is true, there is a signal. It seems to be coming from Earth, but no one will help you. Goosebumps spread over Tavi's body. But why? They heard distant footsteps in the hallway, and Lucien looked up nervously. Not here, he whispered. If you want, we can meet after work, but somewhere else, not here. It has to be somewhere we don't know anyone. This is dangerous. Lucien started walking again. Doc 5? He asked over his shoulder. What's that? A dive bar in the Northern District. Tonight at 7. Tavi nodded and stayed behind. Okay, I'll be there. A moment later she walked back the way she had come from, past the office of Dr. Klemp and Lucien, and was about to go past the statue towards the entrance when suddenly Dr. Klemp opened the office door in the moment she passed it. Surprised, he froze. You're still here, he said, narrowing his eyes. Yes, I got lost, Tavi said and walked towards the exit. The old man glared after her and looked down the hallway she came from. Then he continued his way to the bathroom. Heart-pounding, Tavi walked back across the plaza to her institute. When she arrived, she ran into Mr. Vo. Not him. There you are. Where were you? I was looking for you. I had to clear something up, Tavia muttered and walked past him. What's wrong? You're needed in the lab. You're needed in the lab. You know we only have 2 weeks left to prepare everything. Tavi nodded and went downstairs to the labs. She was in the middle of entering the passengers' data and information into the spacecraft system when the door to the lab opened and she heard footsteps approaching behind her. When she turned around, she looked into Luke's worried and pale face. They blew up Stefano's lab. What? Is he okay? And who? I don't know who. Roxy just drove over and told me. I don't know how Stefano is. He's gone. We need to drive over and look for him, was the first thing that flashed through Tavi's mind. There's no point in going there now. No one knows where Stefano is. All of this happened in the morning. The basement area has been cordoned off. Tavi's mind was racing. Who would do something so despicable? I will go there after work and look for Stefano. What about you? Tavi thought for a moment. Not directly. I need to do something else first. Then I come around. She wanted to tell him about Lucien, but not here. As you want. Lux nodded and walked away. Tavi left work earlier today. She could not concentrate at all. She drove her star car to the northern district. This part of the city was filthy. There was junk and broken down star cars laying around everywhere. Some of the buildings were dilapidated and had been broken into. Slogans and pictures were scrawled on the facades. The star car came to a stop and she climbed out to a metal bridge that led to a glowing sign out of flickering letters that read Dock 5. She pressed a button next to the door. The green plastic scratched and burned. The door slid aside with a loud creaking and groaning, and she stepped in hesitantly. Inside, eerie-looking figures sat slumped over the bar, drunk and yelling, playing cards or babbling to each other. It smelled metallic and of alcohol. In the farthest corner of the bar sat Lucienne. As she walked towards him, the floor stuck to her shoes as if it had never been cleaned. "You really picked a lovely place," she said as she sat down. "It's important that we meet somewhere where we know no one and where nobody will recognize us," he said. Lucienne had a beer in front of him. It looked untouched. He looked nervous. Tavi ordered a beer as well. She wanted to get to the point as quickly as possible. The way home was long and she was curious about what he had to say. "So, the signal, what do you know about it? And why do we need to meet in hell to talk about it?" He began speaking in a low voice. "We are receiving a signal for quite some time already. We discovered it by accident about half a year ago when a satellite had been set up incorrectly. When we tried to reorient the satellite in the right direction, we noticed a periodic reoccurring signal that was recorded by accident. We tested more in the same direction without telling anyone to make sure it was reproducible. We found out that not only it was reproducible, no, we noticed a pattern, and we believed it contained a message, something like a Morse code. The code is heavily distorted and disrupted." Nervously, he looked around. "My colleague thought he made a big discovery and that we will be celebrated for it." Tavi looked at him with wide eyes. "But the opposite happened. First we were laughed at, and we had the feeling that no one was believing us. Then my colleague got weird." Lucian shook his head and frowned. "What do you mean by weird?" Tavi asked. "He believed that he was followed by soldiers of the Federation. He said he was watched, and I was not supporting enough. I did not fully believe him. I told him to calm down. How stupid." "What happened?" Lucien was staring into his beer bottle and was not looking at Tavi anymore. "He disappeared." "How?" Tavi asked. "I don't know. He was just gone from one day to the other. Not working at the institute anymore, not reachable. His home stood empty until it was rented to someone else. I don't know. I don't know what exactly happened, but I'm sure it has something to do with the Federation and with the signal and the direction it's coming from." Tavi was silent for a moment. Lucienne now looked directly at her. "When you came into that office and you told about the signal, you have no idea how dangerous that was. Your friend, who discovered this, is he all right?" Tavi suddenly felt dizzy. Stefano, the explosion. "I actually don't know." "What did you do after that?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "I mean after your colleague disappeared. At first I tried to find him, but everyone at work seemed to know that he quit his job at the institute and he moved away into another city. At some point I just believed it. I wanted to believe it, I guess." Xavier felt the urge to say something against that. How could he give up on his colleague so quickly? But she realized that he was not feeling very well to begin with, and she didn't want him to feel even more guilty. "Why do they want to hide it?" "They think that because we, or rather our ancestors, managed to leave Earth, we are the better and superior species, or something like that. That the people who stayed behind on Earth were second-class humans, and that we can only grow more powerful, only evolve further if we turn our backs on Earth and never make contact with the people there. For example, Dr. Clem believes that the better part of humanity left aboard the ship Starship 1, and that the rest of humanity deserved to stay down there anyway. And to prevent criticism or other opinions from arising among the population, he keeps it all hidden so no one gets stupid ideas." "That's absurd. There needs to be another reason," Tavi said in astonishment. "Did Mr. Vo know about this?" Her shame suddenly turned into anger. He had made her look so foolish, even though she had been right. Is the satellite still pointed towards Earth? She asked. I knew it wasn't right, but I turned our radio telescope away from Earth and focused on other regions. I gave Dr. Klemp my notes, but I didn't talk about it anymore. I wasn't even that interested anymore at some point, to be honest. I had almost forgotten about it until you came. I just knew I had to talk to you. Can you show me the code? Tavi asked, and Lucien pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and slid it across the table to her. She unfolded it. Look, he said, pointing at the top line. The dots and dashes are the signals we received. The grayed out areas are distortions. What you can make out from it is something like I, interference, re-interference, life. What does repeating sequence mean? Tavi asked and took the sheet in her hand. We were able to detect the signal 17 times. It was sent 17 times in a row. It repeats at exact intervals, every 10 seconds. Tavi exhaled. We have to follow up on this, she said. That's impossible. It's too dangerous. The circles under his eyes were carved deeply into Lucien's face. There has to be a way, she said. I need time to process this. Can I take this with me? She folded the sheet of paper with a signal and put it into her bag. For what? He asked. You can't talk to anyone about this. I have to talk to Stefano. He is the one who detected the signal too, and looks. They're my friends, Tavi said. If he is still alive. Lucien looked at her. Tavi didn't respond to that. I know when to stay quiet, she said. I saw that earlier. He still looked at her as if he already regretted having spoken to her. Let me be there, he said suddenly. Tavi hesitated for a moment. Okay, then let's go to Stefano's bar now, she said and got up. They walked up to her star car and she took the signal out once more. Life. I know you're trying to tell us something, she thought. Please don't give up.